5 days. That is how long it took the same city to go from throwing its own clothes into the road in front of him to screaming for his execution. The crowd that welcomed Jesus into Jerusalem and the crowd that chose Barabbas were standing in the same streets in the same week during the same festival. Whatever happened on the road down from the Mount of Olives, it did not hold. It could not even hold until Friday. And the strangest part of the story is that he knew. Luke says that while the shouting was at its loudest, while the coats were still going down in the road ahead of him, he was crying. This is the story of the most misunderstood day in the Gospels, a day people picture as a victory parade, and which was, in every deliberate detail, the opposite of one. Start with the timing, because the timing is not incidental. It is the entire reason the day was dangerous. This is Passover week. Jerusalem in the 1st century was a city of perhaps 40,000 people, and at Passover it swelled to something between 200,000 and 400,000. Josephus gives a figure that most historians think is inflated, but even the conservative estimates have the population multiplying 5 or 6 times over in a matter of days. Pilgrims slept on rooftops, in courtyards, in tents on the hillsides outside the walls. Bethany, where Jesus had been staying, was one of the villages absorbing the overflow. Now understand what Passover commemorates. It is the festival of national liberation. It remembers the night God broke a foreign empire's grip on his people and brought them out of slavery. Every family in that city was, that week, retelling a story about God overthrowing an occupying power. And the city was, at that exact moment, occupied. The Romans understood this perfectly. That is why Pontius Pilate was even in Jerusalem. His actual residence was Caesarea Maritima, a pleasant coastal city with a harbor and a Roman theater. He came up to Jerusalem for the festivals, and he did not come alone. He brought troops, and he stationed them in and around the temple precincts, on the roofs of the colonnades, where the crowds could see them. The message was not subtle and was not meant to be. Remember what this week is about. Do not get any ideas. So into that city, in that week, a man rides in from the east, while the governor of Judea rides in from the west, and one of them is deliberately staging something. The staging is the part that gets missed, and it is the key to the whole day. Read the account carefully, and what you find is not a spontaneous outpouring. It is arranged. Jesus stops on the road, sends 2 disciples ahead into a village, and gives them precise instructions. You will find a colt tied, on which never man sat. Loose him and bring him. And if any man ask you, why do ye loose him? Thus shall ye say unto him, because the Lord hath need of him. That is a password. There is no other sensible reading of it. He is telling them what to say to a specific person who is expecting to hear it. Whether this had been arranged days earlier with a supporter in Bethphage, or whether the gospel writers intend it as foreknowledge, the effect on the day is identical. The animal was waiting, and the arrival was planned. Jesus had walked everywhere for 3 years, Galilee to Jerusalem repeatedly on foot. There is no record of him riding anything at any point until this morning. So the question is not why he rode. It is why he rode this once. The answer is in a book written 500 years earlier, and the crowd knew it by heart. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, thy king cometh unto thee. He is just and having salvation, lowly and riding upon an ass, and upon a colt the foal of an ass. Zechariah chapter 9. It is one of the most specific messianic pictures in the Hebrew scriptures, and it is not vague. The king comes to Jerusalem. He comes riding, and he comes on a donkey. To ride into Jerusalem on a donkey during Passover was not humility, or not only humility. It was a claim, made in a language every literate person in that city could read, and made in public on the busiest day of the year. He had spent 3 years telling people not to say who he was. Tell no man, see thou say nothing to any man. He silenced the demons that named him. He swore the 3 on the mountain to silence. And then he sat on a borrowed colt and rode into the capital city, quoting a prophecy about a king. The silence was over. That is what this day is, not a parade, a declaration. But now the detail that changes the meaning of the whole thing, and which a first-century audience would have caught instantly. The donkey is the wrong animal. A conquering king did not ride a donkey. A conquering king rode a horse or was carried in a chariot at the head of his army. That was the visual language of power in the ancient world, and everybody understood it. The Roman triumph, the highest honor the empire could grant a general, was a procession of the victor in a chariot, with the spoils of war carried behind him and the prisoners walking in chains. There is a real chance Jerusalem saw something close to that same week, from the other direction, as Pilate's column came up from the coast. And against that, a man on a young donkey, not a war horse, not even a full-grown animal, a colt, one that had never been ridden. Zechariah knew what he was doing when he chose that image, and the verse after the one everybody quotes makes it explicit. I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim, and the horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow shall be cut off, and he shall speak peace unto the heathen. The king in that prophecy arrives by disarming. He comes in on the animal you use for peace, not the one you use for war. So Jesus stages a royal entrance and then deliberately gets the props wrong. He accepts the title and rejects the job description in the same gesture. He is saying, in effect, yes, I am the king you have been waiting for, and no, I am not the king you think you are waiting for. It is worth holding those 2 arrivals side by side, because the contrast is the argument. Pilate comes from Caesarea, from the west, along the road up from the sea. He comes with cavalry and with auxiliary infantry, with standards, with the eagle, with leather and polished metal, and the noise a column of armed men makes on a stone road. It is a display, and its purpose is to be seen, an annual reminder, timed precisely for the festival of liberation, of who is actually in charge of this province. Jesus comes from Bethany, from the east, down the Mount of Olives. He comes on a borrowed colt that has never been ridden, surrounded by pilgrims with no weapons, over a road surfaced with other people's coats. One of those processions has the entire military apparatus of the largest empire on earth behind it. The other has a donkey. And the direction is not incidental either. He comes down the Mount of Olives, which is the exact place Zechariah names a few chapters later as where the Lord will stand on the day he intervenes for Jerusalem. Whether the crowd made that connection in the moment we cannot know, but the geography was not neutral ground, and he did not choose it by accident. We should be careful here. This pairing of the 2 processions is a reconstruction. No gospel writer stages it that way, and we do not have a document telling us Pilate rode in on the same morning. What we do have is the practice. Governors came up for the festivals, they brought troops, and they made sure it was noticed. So the two arrivals belong to the same week and the same city, even if we cannot put them in the same hour. The point survives either way, because the point is not really about Pilate. It is about what the crowd was being offered and what they thought they were being offered. Power in that world looked like the thing coming up the Western Road. It looked like cavalry and standards and the capacity to end an argument by force. Everyone in Jerusalem knew what it looked like because it visited them every year. And the man they were crowning had spent 3 years saying that the whole scale was upside down, that the first would be last, that the meek inherit, that the one who wants to be greatest must be a servant, that whoever saves his life loses it. He had said it constantly and in every register, parable, sermon, argument aside. Then he arranged a demonstration of it in public at the largest possible gathering, using the two most legible props available, a prophecy about a king and an animal that no king would ride. It is possibly the clearest thing he ever did, and it was almost universally misread on the day by people who had heard him teach. The crowd took the first half and did not hear the second. Watch what they do. They spread their garments in the way, and others cut down branches from the trees and strewed them in the way. Putting your cloak on the ground in front of someone is not a general gesture of enthusiasm. It has a precedent, and it is a coronation. In the second book of Kings, when Jehu is proclaimed king by the army, the text says, "They hasted and took every man his garment and put it under him on the top of the stairs, and blew with trumpets, saying, 'Jehu is king.'" That is what the crowd is doing on that road. They are crowning him. Not metaphorically, they are performing the physical act associated with making a man king. And the branches carry their own weight. John specifies palm branches, and palms had been a nationalist symbol for 200 years. When the Maccabees drove the Greeks out of the temple and rededicated it, they entered with palm branches. Palms appeared on the coins, the Jewish rebels struck during their revolts against Rome. To wave a palm branch in Jerusalem at Passover was roughly as neutral as waving a flag at a protest. This was a political demonstration. That is not a modern reading imposed on the text. It is what the objects meant to the people holding them. Then there is the word itself. Hosanna is not a cheer. It has been treated as one for so long that it now functions as a synonym for hooray, but the Hebrew behind it, Hoshianah, is a petition. It means save now, save please. They were not congratulating him, they were begging him. And the line they attach to it comes from Psalm 118, which was part of the Hallel, the group of psalms sung at the great festivals. Every pilgrim on that road had sung these words at Passover their whole life. Save now, I beseech thee, O Lord. O Lord, I beseech thee, send now prosperity. Blessed be he that cometh in the name of the Lord. So the crowd is quoting the festival liturgy at him and applying it to him personally. They are taking the words they normally sing to God about a coming deliverer and shouting them at a man on a donkey. What did they think was about to happen? Almost certainly this, that he was going to go into that city and do something about Rome. The expectation of the age was for a Messiah in the mold of David or Judas Maccabeus, a military and political deliverer who would end the occupation and restore the kingdom. That hope was not fringe. It was mainstream, and it was fervent, and Passover was when it burned hottest. They were asking to be saved. They simply had a very specific idea of what they needed saving from. and it was wearing armor and standing on the temple roof. The authorities saw exactly what was happening. Some of the Pharisees in the crowd say to him, "Master, rebuke thy disciples." That is not petty, it is closer to a warning. A crowd chanting messianic psalms at a man being crowned in the road, in a city packed with pilgrims and garrisoned by nervous Roman soldiers, is how massacres started. Within 40 years, the pattern would run to its conclusion, and Jerusalem would be destroyed for it. Jesus does not accept the correction. I tell you that, if these should hold their peace, the stones would immediately cry out. There is no room in that answer for the reading where he is an innocent bystander to somebody else's enthusiasm. He is told to stop it. He says it cannot be stopped, and that creation itself would take over if the crowd fell silent. He organized the animal. He fulfilled the prophecy on purpose. He declined to quiet the crowd. Whatever this was, he did it deliberately. And then Luke gives us the detail that makes the day unbearable. And when he was come near, he beheld the city and wept over it. Not a tear. The Greek word Luke uses is the strong one. It means to wail, to sob audibly. This is the same word used for the mourning at a tomb. In the middle of his own coronation, at the point on the road where the whole city comes into view at once, he broke down. And what he says, while weeping, is a prophecy of catastrophe. If thou hadst known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, but now they are hid from thine eyes. For the days shall come upon thee, that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee, and compass thee round, and keep thee in on every side, and shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children within thee. That is a siege, a trench thrown up around the walls, the city encircled, no one in or out, and then it is leveled. In the year 70, the Roman general Titus besieged Jerusalem. He built a wall of circumvallation around the entire city to stop anyone escaping. Josephus says it went up in 3 days. The siege lasted months. Starvation inside the walls was catastrophic. When the city fell, the temple burned, and the destruction was so complete that the second temple has never been rebuilt. Whatever you make of the prophecy, hold the human picture. He is being crowned by people who want him to fight Rome. He is looking at the city and seeing what happens when it does. And he adds the reason, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. Not because they rejected the wrong doctrine, because they did not recognize the moment when it was in front of them. They were looking so hard for one kind of rescue that they could not see another kind standing in the road. That is the emotional center of Palm Sunday, and it is the reason the day is not triumphant. The cheering and the weeping are simultaneous. The crowd has never been louder, and he has never been more alone in what he understands. Now, what actually happened when he got there? This is where Mark does something devastating, and it is almost always skipped. Matthew and Luke move straight from the entry to the cleansing of the temple, which reads as a natural climax. He arrives, he sweeps in, he overturns the tables. Mark, who is generally thought to be the earliest gospel and is not in the business of building drama, tells it differently. And Jesus entered into Jerusalem and into the temple, and when he had looked round about upon all things, and now the eventide was come, he went out unto Bethany with the 12. He arrived, he looked at everything. It was getting late, he left. That is the anticlimax at the end of the parade, and it is the most quietly ominous verse in the passage. The crowd has just crowned him. He walks into the temple, looks around at all of it, says nothing, and goes back out to the village to sleep. Whatever they were expecting to happen that afternoon did not happen. There was no confrontation, no proclamation, no uprising. The action comes the next day, and when it comes, it is aimed not at the Roman garrison, but at the temple's own market. Before we go further, John gives us something the other three do not, and it explains why the crowd was that size in the first place. John says the reason people came out to meet him was Lazarus. Much people of the Jews therefore knew that he was there, and they came not for Jesus' sake only, but that they might see Lazarus also, whom he had raised from the dead. The raising at Bethany had happened weeks earlier, 2 miles from where this road begins, and the city had not stopped talking about it. So the crowd on that road is not a random festival crowd who like the look of a man on a donkey. A significant part of it is there because of a specific, verifiable, recent event that a great many of them had witnessed or knew witnesses to. The people, therefore, that was with him when he called Lazarus out of his grave and raised him from the dead bear record. That is the engine under Palm Sunday. And John says the authorities understood it exactly that way, because he reports the chief priests deciding to kill Lazarus as well. The only way to deal with the evidence being to remove the evidence. Then John gives their reaction to the entry itself, and it is the most quotable line in the chapter. Perceive ye how ye prevail nothing? Behold, the world is gone after him. That is despair, spoken by people who have run out of options. And John's readers, 40 or 50 years later, would have heard it as an accidental prophecy, because by the time he wrote it down the world had, in fact, gone after him into Syria, Egypt, Asia Minor and Rome. And then, immediately, John reports something that seems to come out of nowhere. There were certain Greeks among them that came up to worship at the feast. The same came therefore to Philip, and desired him, saying, Sir, we would see Jesus. Greeks, Gentiles in Jerusalem for Passover, asking for an introduction. Philip does not know what to do with the request and fetches Andrew, and the two of them take it to Jesus together, which tells you how unusual it was. And Jesus does not answer the question. He answers something much larger. The hour is come that the Son of Man should be glorified. Every time before this, across the whole of John's Gospel, the phrase has been the opposite. At Cana, mine hour is not yet come. In Galilee, my time is not yet come. Twice in Jerusalem, no man laid hands on him because his hour was not yet come. For 11 chapters, the clock has not started. Gentiles ask to see him, and the clock starts. That is not an accident of arrangement. The moment the message reaches beyond Israel is the moment he declares the hour has arrived, and what he says next makes plain what the hour contains. Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. He is asked for an audience, and responds with an image of burial. A seed kept safe stays exactly one seed. The only way it becomes anything is by going into the ground and being lost. Then, remarkably, now is my soul troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour, but for this cause came I unto this hour. That is Gethsemane, days early in public. In the middle of the week he is being celebrated. He states the prayer and rejects it in the same breath. And then the voice. Father, glorify thy name. Then came there a voice from heaven, saying, I have both glorified it and will glorify it again." This is the third and last time the Father speaks aloud in the Gospels: the baptism, the mountain, and now this. And John records the crowd's reaction, which is the detail I find hardest to forget. "The people therefore that stood by and heard it said that it thundered. Others said, an angel spake to him." They heard it, they just filed it under weather. Standing in the same street at the same moment, hearing the same sound. Some heard God, some heard an angel, and some heard a storm coming in over the hills. Nobody in that crowd was given more evidence than anybody else. They simply did different things with it. And Jesus says, "This voice came not because of me, but for your sakes." It was for them, and most of them looked at the sky and wondered if they should get inside. Think about how that must have landed. If you have spent the morning laying your coat in the road for a man you believe is about to liberate your country, and by evening he has toured the temple like a visitor and gone to bed in Bethany, you have a decision to make about what you actually witnessed. And what he does the following morning is stranger still, and it is the one part of this week that people genuinely struggle with. On the way back into the city on the Monday, he is hungry. He sees a fig tree in leaf at a distance, goes over to it, finds nothing but leaves and curses it. "No man eat fruit of the hereafter forever." Read flatly, that is a man losing his temper with a plant. And Mark makes it worse by adding a line that looks like it undermines the whole episode. For the time of figs was not yet. It was not fig season. The tree had done nothing wrong. But look at where Mark puts it, because Mark is doing something deliberate that he does repeatedly in his gospel. He starts one story, interrupts it with a second, then returns to finish the first, and the two are always meant to interpret each other. The fig tree is cursed. Then Jesus goes into the temple and drives out the traders. Then, the next morning, they pass the fig tree again, and it has withered from the roots. The temple episode is inside the fig tree episode. That is not chronology, that is commentary. And the horticultural detail everybody treats as a problem is actually the point. A fig tree in that region puts out small early fruit, sometimes called Barabbas, at roughly the same time as its leaves, before the main crop. A tree in full leaf is advertising. It is making a claim about what is inside it. So a tree with leaves and nothing else is not simply barren. It is a tree that promised and did not deliver. Which is exactly the charge he then walks into the temple and makes in person. The fig tree had been an image for Israel in the prophets for centuries, in Jeremiah, in Hosea, in Micah, who writes, "There is no cluster to eat. My soul desired the first-ripe fruit." It was not an obscure symbol. It was a standard one. So the sequence reads, "Here is something in full leaf that has no fruit on it. Now watch me go and say the same thing about the temple." And in the temple, the charge is specific. "My house shall be called of all nations the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves." Of all nations. He is quoting Isaiah, and the phrase matters because the court he is standing in is the court of the Gentiles. The only part of the temple a non-Jew was permitted to enter. That was the one space in the building where the nations could come and pray, and it had been filled with currency exchange and livestock. Remember who had just asked to see him? Greeks in Jerusalem for the feast. They would have been standing in that court, and what was in it was a market. The following morning Peter notices the tree. "Master, behold, the fig tree which thou cursedst is withered away. And Mark notes the detail that finishes the image, dried up from the roots, not wilting from the top, dead from the bottom. Whatever else this week is, it is not a man arriving in a city to be admired. It is a systematic, escalating public statement, and every element of it, the animal, the prophecy, the tree, the tables, is aimed at the same target and read in the same language. Which brings us to the question everybody asks about this week. How does a crowd shouting Hosanna on Sunday shout, crucify him on Friday? Part of the answer is that they may not be the same crowd. Jerusalem held hundreds of thousands that week. The group on the road from Bethany was largely made up of pilgrims and Galileans, his own people, who had followed him from the north or come out from the city to meet him. The crowd assembled in front of Pilate on Friday morning was a different gathering in a different place, at an hour when most pilgrims would not have been present, and the Gospels say plainly that the chief priests moved among them. But it would be too comfortable to leave it there, because part of the answer is also that disappointed hope curdles fast. The crowd asked to be saved from Rome. He did not do it. He rode in as a king, then declined to act like one, then attacked the temple establishment instead of the occupation, then allowed himself to be arrested without resistance. For someone whose hope was national deliverance, that is not merely a letdown, it looks like a fraud. And a crowd that feels it has been made a fool of is capable of a great deal. Then Pilate offers them a choice, and the choice is pointed in a way that is easy to miss. Barabbas is described by Mark as a man who had committed murder in the insurrection, a rebel taken during an uprising against Rome. So the crowd is offered two prisoners. One of them tried to fight Rome with violence and failed. The other rode into the city on a donkey and refused to fight at all. They chose the fighter. That is the same choice they made on the road, only now it is explicit. They wanted a deliverer with a sword. When they were finally given the option in plain terms, they took the man who had actually picked one up. So what do we do with Palm Sunday? The first thing is to stop reading it as a happy day that went wrong. It was never a happy day. Every element in it is double-edged, and he built it that way. The prophecy he fulfilled is the one about a king who abolishes cavalry. The animal he chose is the one that says this is not a conquest. The word the crowd shouted is a plea, not a compliment. And the man at the center of it was in tears. The second is to notice what he did not do. He did not correct them. He could have stopped on that road and explained that he was not the kind of king they meant, and there is no sign that he did. He let them crown him, wept for them, and rode on into a week that ended on a cross. And I think that is because the two things were never as separate as the crowd assumed. They wanted deliverance from an occupation. He was on his way to a deliverance he considered larger, and the route to it went through the thing they would have called defeat. The third is the line he wept over, "Thou knewest not the time of thy visitation." That is not a complaint about ignorance. It is grief over timing. The thing they had prayed for their entire lives came up that road on a donkey, and they were looking over its shoulder for an army. There is a version of that available to anyone. Asking sincerely for one thing, being answered with something better, and not recognizing the answer because it did not arrive in the shape that was expected. They shouted save now. He was, at that exact moment, on his way to do precisely that. And within the week, almost every one of them concluded he had failed. 5 days between the coats in the road and the crowd in front of Pilate. He knew that when he got on the donkey, he got on anyway.